The war in North Africa had begun well for the British, who drove back the Italians across hundreds of miles of desert. In February 1941, Rommel arrived, followed by the crack troops of Germany's Africa Corps. Within 4 months, they had succeeded in taking back most of Britain's previous gains. The British and Commonwealth troops had captured the important Libyan port of Tobruk on the 22nd of January 1941. But now, in June, it was the last British stronghold in Libya, but heavily besieged by the Germans. The British commander, General Wavell, launched Operation Battle Axe in an attempt to relieve Tobruk and drive the Germans back. But to reach the city, his men had to break through the Hellfire Pass, which was controlled by the Germans.
In June 1941, we had a tank battle with the Germans at Hellfire Pass.
Operation Battle Axe began on the 15th of June 1941. Thanks to German monitoring of Allied radio signals, Rommel knew that the attack was coming. In their well-prepared positions above the Hellfire Pass, the Germans waited through the night. At 4 a.m., they heard the sound of engines, and minutes later, the shriek of incoming shells announced the arrival of the British Matilda tanks.
We went through all our ammunition in a very short amount of time. After that, for 1.5 days, we carried on the attacks with empty ammunition boxes, because they said it was necessary for morale. That's what they called it. We were stuck up there on this plateau because the other side was barred by a number of Matilda tanks that we couldn't take out with our 37mm anti-tank gun. We were stuck there for about an hour, and then a few tanks from the 8th Armoured Regiment came along. Among them was a Panzer Mark III, which got hit to the left of us. So it was there that we became conscious of the superiority of this battleship of the desert, as one might call it. Then further ahead, about 200 meters further in front, there was a German 37mm anti-tank gun, which was trying to hit the Matildas between the body and the tower. That was the only chance. It was getting through a lot of shells, and as we couldn't do anything anyway, we moved the ammunition towards this gun. A lot of ammunition was wasted. But we didn't manage to put these stubborn giants out of combat until 2 88mm guns arrived from Capuzzo. They succeeded in silencing them.
The German 88mm guns possessed a volume and authority that the Allied troops had never heard before.
And it was the first time we'd really seriously encountered their anti-tank guns. My squadron, which was then 16 tanks, we made a frontal attack, and within about 35 minutes we only had 2 tanks left. 17 men, 2 tanks.
The 88mm gun was an anti-aircraft gun with the very high muzzle velocity that is necessary for anti-aircraft work. It's very much a precision gun.
You thought you're pretty well safe in a tank, but you learn very quickly that you're not, actually. tanks are very vulnerable, and of course the casualties, the tank casualties were very bad, because if you got burned in a tank, those who survive are very badly burned.
Die Rolle der 88 war, dass
The significance of the 88 was that we finally had a weapon against the strong Mark IIs, the Matilda tanks. Before that, we had no weapon against this tank, and it was decisively important that they were taken out. The Matilda was the strongest tank we had come across so far.
bis dahin kennengelernt hatten.
The seemingly impregnable British Matilda tanks had shaken the morale of the German troops until they took delivery of their 88mm anti-aircraft guns.
Es ist
There's the actual impact of the guns, and I also have to say it does affect the morale of the infantry when you have such a weapon nearby. Then you almost feel jubilant. You're glad that you can now defend yourself.
wehren kann.
If you're lying helplessly stuck for hours, as we were, then it feels like a release.
Das wie eine Erlösung vor.
Their superior firepower gave the Germans the upper hand, enabling them to take thousands of prisoners before the battle was over.